Today on Words and Numbers, passports,
opting out of Social Security,
erotica,
and a return to the economic policies of the Nixon era.
All this and more coming up on Words and Numbers, a Civil original production. Check us out at civil.com. That's CIVL.com.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
It's new and exciting in your world this week, Ant.
We got a lot of listener email following our episode on Social Security and winding it down.
Yeah, I read some of that.
Somebody posted a thing which I had known at one time and forgotten, and now I'm thinking about it a lot more, and that is that the Amish are exempt from Social Security. They neither pay in nor do they receive benefits, which was exactly the kind of thing we were talking about, of opting out of it. And so I'm looking into this to see, okay, what's required here. In the rules, and of course I'm not a lawyer, but the rules sound like they step well over the line of separation of what's come to be known as separation of church and state. But nonetheless, here it is. The core eligibility requirements to not participate in Social Security. You must be a member of a recognized religious sect or division thereof, as determined by the Social Security Administration. So right off the bat, we've got the government officially recognizing religious organizations.
Well, I mean, there's a good reason for that. And I remember when the Religious Freedom Restoration Act got pushed through some years ago, prisoners decided that they needed outdoor sweat lodges in order to participate in their religion. And that's where every drug deal in prison went through.
Right, yeah.
Because they had to have privacy from the guards. And there's all kinds of examples like this. And there's a fundamental friction, right? Whose children can be mandated to go to school, things like this. Can Catholic schools use town buses to get their kids into their schoolyards? Right? There's all kinds of things around the edges. But my first question here is, can I convert to Amish? I mean, at my advanced age, it's a little too late, but maybe my children would be well advised to become Amish.
Yeah, and that's a twist that I didn't look into to see what's required. I mean, can you just put up your hand and say, okay, I now proclaim that I'm Amish? Do you need to be particularly accepted into? And if so, all of a sudden now we have the government deciding who is and who is not a member of a particular religion. Well, that's really weird.
The thing to do would be not to bother the poor Amish people with this, but to start your own Amish community.
Right. Well, but then the fine print. You must be a member of a recognized religious sect or division thereof that has existed continuously since 1950.
So you got to find an Amish person who went on, what do they call it, Rumspringa, and then didn't go back, and then say, come and be part of our Amish community. We embrace things like electricity here.
I don't know. I'm just appalled. I'm appalled that I see some Social Security bureaucrat somewhere deciding what is and is not a religion, who is and is not a member. But it goes on. It goes on. Your religion has to be opposed to accepting insurance benefits on the basis of religious principles, specifically not economic principles.
Well, going to have an interesting Muslim problem if anybody ever reads that fine print.
Why so?
Because they don't, insurance is a problem.
Is it? I knew that interest was. Is insurance also?
Yeah.
Wow. The individual must personally waive all rights to receive Social Security or Medicare benefits. Also, your sect must provide for its dependent members. So it's not just a matter of walking away. You have to show that you've got something on the back end that's going to support your members, like Social Security would.
And here's where the Amish are stand head and shoulders above everybody else in this respect, right? They are naturally a communitarian society.
Right.
Right. They all hang together. It's not a radically individualist society like we would think of our own. So you can see where it would work for them and not for others.
And then finally, there's this last piece that I think is the clincher. The exemption applies to self-employment income derived from a trade or business. That is, it's not, you'd have to have some trade. You're a carpenter or what have you, self-employed. Wages from secular employment remain subject to regular Social Security tax unless both the employer and employee are exempt members of the same sect.
So when you go to the Amish furniture store, that's fine. You know, you can see why these rules are in place.
Yeah, but if you work for Domino's, forget it. It's just not happening.
Your host. So, I mean, look, I get this. Your main objection here is that somebody in a bureaucratic office is going to be passing judgment on who is and is not a member of a specific group, and if that group is or is not beholden to the Social Security program. But in the end, somebody has to decide.
Yeah, somebody does. So, I mean, there's that problem, but it's also, to me, a ray of hope that we can point and say, look, our argument that we should be allowed to opt out of Social Security is not without precedent.
Yeah. Well, not exactly where I would have thought we'd find the hope, but okay, I'll take it.
Well, it's not just a religious thing. If you recall, when we used to go to Kentucky, at least it was news to me, Kentucky public school teachers are exempt from Social Security because Kentucky has its own version of Social Security for teachers.
Right, but as those teachers used to tell us with alarming regularity, they weren't exempt, they couldn't get it.
Oh, they were expelled from Social Security.
Yes, they would have much preferred the Social Security option. So save your hate mail on that one, Kentucky teachers. I want to talk about something a little strange that hit my feeds this morning. It's long been said, and rightfully so, that the U.S. passport is the absolute gold standard in passports. Right? A U.S. passport gets you out of so much grief and aggravation when you travel internationally. You can't overstate it. And I mean, I told you about the story of when I was in Casablanca, yeah? Do you remember that one? I was in the Casablanca airport. I'm at the end of a line that must have had 200 people in it. And a guy from the booth got out of the booth and came all the way to me in the back of the line and pointed and he said, U.S.? And I'm like, oh no. Oh, no. And I said, yes. And he said, come with me. And he walked me around the line, past all the guards, and said, you go now, and pointed into the airport.
That's it. Just leave. Wow.
Whatever you like. You just go do it. And the U.S. passport, there is something called the Henley Passport Index that keeps track of the strength, the relative strength of all the passports of the world. And the relative strength of the passports of the world are measured by how many places you can go without a visa. And that's actually a pretty fine metric, right? And the U.S. has been near the top of that list every year for the 20 years that it has been in existence, until this year when it dropped out of the top 10 to number 12.
Yeah, because I know that some European countries are now requiring visas.
Yep. So turns out when you agitate other countries with various policies, they will agitate back in a number of unexpected ways. And this is part of the whack-a-mole game of unanticipated or...
Yeah, unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, thank you. And you wonder where this one's going to end. Right? We already know that tourism in is way down. And the more difficult other countries make it for us to leave, the fewer people will go other places. And there's an isolating factor in our isolationism. Go figure.
Yeah.
And it works in both directions. But one of the immediate things that we can see now, one of the immediate consequences is this: your passport isn't worth nearly what it was just a few years back. It's still a great passport to have, but there are 11 now that are better.
And you've touched on something that I talk about a lot when I talk about free trade, and that is that countries that engage in free trade, more trade, will tend to have more peaceable relations. And you can see this; it's very clear in the data. And the argument I always gave was, look, if there's lots of trade between countries, that means there's lots of people in each country who have relationships with people in the other country. Now, they may only be business relationships, business connections, right? It makes it much harder for those two governments to argue to the people that the other one is the enemy. You said, no, I know these people. I deal with them all the time. But so too here, I think. The harder we make it, or the harder anybody makes it for people to travel between countries, the less peaceable, the less opportunity for peaceable relations exist.
Well, it's a form of cultural exchange.
Right.
People show up, they do their thing, they spend some money, you meet them, you think, oh, I guess Mongolians are just like us, or pick whatever exotic nationality you want and toss it in that slot. But the less that happens, the worse things tend to get. And it's interesting because, okay, we're not at the top of the list. Who is? Asian countries are the top three.
Really?
Singapore, South Korea, and Japan.
Yeah. Singapore is not surprising.
Yeah, come and go. Right? So, there you go.
We're happy to announce that Civil members can join me and James for a new lecture series, Words and Numbers Live. Words and Numbers Live is a members-only series in which James and I talk about issues in politics, philosophy, and economics. We take a deeper dive and then invite listeners for a live Q&A session. In this week's inaugural session, which starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we examine human respect as a foundation for civil society. We start with the two greatest sentences in the English language. All men are created equal, and how can I help? Together, these sentences operationalize the principle of human respect. Taken seriously, human respect leads to political equality, and thereafter, economic and political freedom. Taken to the extreme, it's quite possible that it could obviate the need for government entirely. To participate in this exclusive series, subscribe to Civil at civil.com. That's CIVL.com. When you log into civil.com, you'll find an archive of our past lecture series, as well as the collection of all our episodes of Words and Numbers, and announcements about upcoming lectures in our new Words and Numbers Live series. Subscribe to Civil for $5 a month or $50 for an annual subscription.
This brings us to the foolishness of the week, and this is one that I've been waiting to get to for a while. You know, Ant, how I love talking about all things AI, and I like talking about all things AI from a very different perspective than you do. Sometimes I like to talk about how it will kill us all in the end. Other times I like to talk about how it's so stupid it doesn't know who the president is right now. But, Ant, the seismic news has finally hit. ChatGPT will soon allow, quote, erotica, unquote, for adults in a major policy shift.
No way. I see AI news all the time. I haven't seen that.
It's everywhere today. Fresh off the digital press.
I have to hold this up now as an example. I'm neither endorsing it nor condemning it.
Are you sure you want to hold something up in this discussion
of competition?
Oh, so you're not going to hold something up physically. You're going to just
Stop it. Why?
I can't.
Why?
Because it's hilarious.
Because there are other AIs whose market niche is this. The one that comes to mind is Venice. And their big thing is, look, you can say anything you want to the AI. We're not going to censor you. In fact, I've had to use Venice on occasion when I was asking some, what was I doing? No, I was making a slide for a presentation. And I wanted Bill Gates there doing something, trading stocks or whatever the slide was. And ChatGPT refused to make it because this is a public person. I'm not going to make a picture involving this. I had to go to some other AI to do this. But what's happening here is ChatGPT, largely, I would believe, because of their lackluster rollout of 5.0, are seeing their market share, although they are the number one, but I'm sure they're seeing their market share slip, and they're looking to gain back. This is the way to do it.
It remains to be seen what erotica for adults actually means. I mean, at the very least, it's going to be dirty talk with an AI, right? People typing nonsense back and forth. Now, why this is exciting to anyone, I will literally never understand. Why not just go talk to your refrigerator? It's the same damn thing. But laugh all you want. You know I'm right. Come on. But it's not going to be long before people become directors of their own AI pornographic movies.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to happen almost immediately.
Well, there's already clips. I'm regularly seeing clips on Facebook that are AI generated. And the only way I know they're AI generated is because it's a ridiculous thing that I'm seeing. But it looks legitimate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I get taken by them sometimes. I look at it and I say, "Oh my God!"
Right,
and then I have to sit back and say, "No, that's not right." And then you realize that guy had an extra finger, or he ran right through a flower pot. Right, there are these giveaways. But we have an interesting question, a series of interesting questions that we're going to have to answer. When you can make pornography to order, it's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. And the typical niceties that occur between human beings in this kind of section of human relationships are going to be wholly absent. And for all the people who say that pornography, traditional pornography, God, there's a term I didn't think I was ever going to use, but traditional pornography has made us a more coarse society, or somehow less refined as human beings than we might have otherwise been. Right. By taking the interaction, the human interaction out of this one thing. You best buckle up, because if you think that was bad, wait until you see what comes next. And it's going to be a problem.
Well, there's going to be some weirdness that goes on as well. ChatGPT has a memory function so that you can come back to it, and even if it's a new chat that you're dealing with, it will remember stuff. Yeah. So, we're going to end up in a situation where somebody logs on at the office to ask, what's the stock exchange doing? And the thing starts coming onto them because it has a memory of that.
Well, and then there's going to be another batch of problems that became a problem. This sort of problem became a problem when our lives became almost fully digitalized, right, in the kind of early 2000s. And I used to tell young people at the time when I was teaching in colleges, be very careful about what photographs and videos you put online. Be very, very careful, because potential employers will see them. What happens when there's a data leak from ChatGPT and we get to see the twisted things that people are creating? And what happens when they run for Congress or become CEO of a company or become a nominee for the Supreme Court, right? But we're going to have to examine all of this, and it's going to be a disaster.
To people who would point to this and say this is one more example of the decline of civilization, I remind you that pornography is historically the first application of any new tech, going all the way back to painting on the sides of cave walls.
And if you don't want to call that technology, I believe the first film ever made, or the second, was pornographic.
Oh, yeah, the printing press right after the Gutenberg Bible, possibly right before it, was pornography.
So, yeah, I wrote on this a long, long time ago. Porn drives every technological innovation that we've had, one way or another. And as a matter of fact, you can make a very good case that the internet didn't proliferate without it.
Yeah, the internet, well, even going back to, I was a kid at the time, but video stores. Before video stores like Blockbuster became a thing, there were the sleazy video stores.
That's right.
Where you got porn.
Or the mom and pop video store that had that Greg Brady stream of buttons and doodads keeping kids from looking in, but you could walk right into that magical back room where they had all the filthy things.
Right.
And, this is going to be very, very interesting, because I don't think anybody would say that our technological advance hasn't made us coarser. It has. It's made us less humane in many, many ways. And this will accelerate that to some degree. Now, whether it's a flash in the pan or it just keeps right on going, who knows? But ChatGPT is responding to market pressure, and they are going to do this, and it's going to be a fantastic hit, and more people will decry it than is possible given the numbers that we will see people using it.
Right, yeah.
So there you go.
The word you're looking for may be profane.
That's a hard word, Ant.
There's a theologian who I like very much who said the profane is making public that which is properly private.
Yeah, that was Father, jeez. He ran in the same circles I did. He ran in Straussian political philosophical circles. And his name escapes me now, and it will forever. But that was his definition of pornography. Making the private public. But, I mean, you could see the flaw in that right off the bat. Going to the bathroom in public is pornography. No, it's not.
Well, he didn't say pornography. He said
things.
The profane.
It's not profane either. It's just going to the bathroom.
I don't know.
Look, there's always going to be a definitional problem. This is why when it got to the Supreme Court, what's pornography? I can't define it, but I know it when I see it, right?
Right.
And I think there's something fundamentally correct about that assertion. I can't define it. I mean, I can talk all about it. I can give you a word cloud that would capture it, but I can't give you a pithy definition. But I know it when I see it. I remember on Parks and Recreation, they had one of the kind of minor characters was a porn star. And she was running for political office, and everybody's going on and on and on and on about what pornography is. And they asked her, and she went, "Easy, it's when the penis goes in." Well, I mean, look, it is kind of
a practical definition, I guess.
It's pretty easy when you think about it, but that leaves out lots of things.
Right.
And you can see that no matter how you approach these things, you're never going to hit the nail squarely on the head. It's just not possible. So what ChatGPT comes to offer will be desirable to many, many, many people. That doesn't make it good. That doesn't make it right or best. It doesn't make it wrong either. I'm just saying that a lot of people are going to want to use it for this purpose. and there will be downstream consequences of that. And I'm interested in the downstream consequences. I honestly don't really know what they're going to be. I have my suspicions, but I don't really know. And I mean, I've made the case that if we could make artificial child pornography for pedophiles, that would be better than any other option that the pedophile wanted.
Yeah, I'm listening to you say this and hoping that you keep speaking, because I can see someone taking a clip of what you just said and running with it.
Pedophiles are tremendous recidivists. Mm-hmm. They don't stop doing what they do. The only way to stop them is to imprison them forever or kill them. Mm-hmm. Or maybe technology solves that problem.
Redirect their
impetus. And whenever I bring this up to well-educated people who can think things through, and I say, would you prefer this? Their immediate response is always, ew, no.
Right, yeah.
Because it is disgusting, if you think about it. It just may be less corrosive than any other option. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting line of questioning to get into. And ChatGPT may answer this for us. So we'll see. As always, we end up by saying, so we'll see. Because that's always the answer.
Well, that conversation went sideways real fast.
I kind of liked it. This is fascinating.
It is. I just don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, then talk about something else, smart guy.
Yeah. Something else uplifting. How about Nixon?
Well, now that you bring him up, he comes up a lot because people ask me things like, should Nixon really have been impeached? It didn't seem like he did anything nearly as bad as every president since Nixon has done. And there's something to that, right?
It is kind of quaint if you think about it in today's terms.
Yeah, it does. It seems kind of cute, right? That a bunch of jackwagons broke into the Watergate Hotel, taped the lock over a door the way you do, went in and messed about in the DNC headquarters and forgot to remove the tape. Who is in charge of that, by the way? G. Gordon Liddy, who used to say on his radio show and in everything he ever wrote, I have an IQ of 155. Well, Mr. 155, how come you didn't remember to just take your tape back? You think you would have had a checklist or something, but no. And, when we look back on Nixon, we generally think of only the end of the term, right? When he was told in no uncertain terms that he would be impeached and he would be convicted, and that it was time to go. And he said, all right, and signed his resignation paper, and off he went, elevating Gerald Ford to the presidency. Interestingly, the only president we've ever had who never stood for a national federal election.
That's right, because he was
from the House of Representatives.
Spiro Agnew,
who was a bag man for the administration, who had every reason to disappear. And Ford came in, a representative from Michigan, elected by one House district to the presidency.
So, never elected vice president, ascends to the presidency, of course, never elected there either.
And then pardons Nixon, because what the hell else he gonna do? He said, and he gave his reason, I was spending 90% of my time on one man. And I thought maybe I should spend all of my time on the American people. So he pardoned him and said, to hell with this. And it cost him dearly. He didn't win. He probably would have had he not done that. But, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And that's what we think of when we think of Nixon. But Nixon himself was rehabilitated in later life, and it was kind of a grand old man of politics. And we would see him on the news discussing things, and he was more or less forgiven. And, he won the presidency twice, relatively comfortably, massively one time. Came damn close in 1960, If he didn't go on television to debate Kennedy, he probably would have won that one too. Well, not that one too, that one instead of the last one, because you can only serve two terms. Memo to Donald Trump. But
and that's an interesting case. One of the first, was it the first or one of the first televised presidential debates?
It was first. And
televised
And Nixon had tremendous back pain, something I'm very sympathetic to. And he was on stage sweating bullets, and he looked uncomfortable, and he looked angry, the way that people in real pain often look. And people who watched it on TV overwhelmingly thought that Kennedy had won the debate. People who listened to it on the radio overwhelmingly thought that Nixon had won the debate.
How interesting.
Isn't that fascinating? Fascinating. Yeah. But, it is what it is. It was a tight election, a squeaker. Republicans are still claiming to this day that it was stolen, right? That the dead in Chicago swung the election. They didn't, but they still make hay about this. People love to talk about stolen elections. We don't really have any, but they love talking about them. The Democrats are doing it right now, as a matter of fact. Trump stole the last election, don't you know?
Somehow it's only the elections they lose.
Yeah, of course. But anyway, the thing with Nixon that we all forget very casually is that he wasn't all that conservative, right? He was a Republican, but he was not a terribly conservative man. Opened up China, which I think only a Republican could have done. I think if a Democrat had done that, he would have been labeled a communist sympathizer immediately, especially at the time. So, all right, that's a big win. But domestic policies, very problematic under Nixon if you're a conservative. And I'm thinking, and we're going to talk about wage and price controls back in 1971.
Yeah, and we should probably preface it by saying why we're talking about it.
I suspect that's right.
And you ran across the article, I haven't seen it, that our current Treasury Secretary is talking about the administration imposing price floors.
He's talking about a number of things. Price floors, chief among them, across a number of industries.
Not goods. Industries.
Those industries are not listed yet. He's also, in the same breath, also said that the United States government will very likely take stakes in more American companies in the form of stock purchases. Mm-hmm. And you might recall you might recall that we did this with Intel not too long ago. And if you put these two things together and asked, 6 years ago, if you asked Bernie Sanders if this was a good idea, he would have said unqualified, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is Sanders' platform right here.
That's right. He wouldn't say it now because now it's Donald Trump's idea, and Bernie Sanders doesn't care about the ideas nearly as much as he cares about partisan hackery.
The government taking stakes in U.S. companies is a bad idea.
I don't think you
everybody
said bad
who's
enough.
Listening, go and tell you absolutely do not want the government messing around with stock and bond prices. Leave that to markets. You're going to create all kinds of havoc with people's retirements, and we need those things because Social Security has gone bankrupt.
But what you also have to stress is bad is the United States government deciding what things are going to cost.
Right.
And that's what a price floor does. Why don't you explain what a price floor is in basic terminology so we're all on the same page?
The price floor, there's two flavors of this, of price controls, the price ceiling and the price floor, both price controls. The government steps in and says, in the case of a price floor, you may not sell the product for less than X, pick a number. In the case of a price ceiling, you may not sell the product for more than X. Now, we tend to see price ceilings when we see price controls, they tend to be price ceilings, and they tend to come on the heels of some natural disaster. So you can't get gas, you can't get water, and people are selling a pint of water for $10, and the government comes in and says, "Oh no, you're not allowed to do that." And what happens is you get a shortage.
That's right.
Because this is the thing I always tell my students when I talk about price controls, is a price is a metric. It's not a lever. It's not something the government can go and throw and reality changes. And the analogy I give is your kid is running a temperature. And so you take the thermometer and you stick it in the kid, and the thermometer says, 101. Now, there's two ways to deal with this. One is you give the kid medicine to cure the problem. The other is you take a thermometer and you scratch off the numbers and you write in other numbers. And of course that's stupid, but that's exactly what a price control is. The price control is not changing the value of the product. It's simply changing the number. And so you exchange what would have been a shortage for waiting in line for hours to get the product.
Right. So a price ceiling always yields shortages.
And yes. The price ceiling yields shortages, yeah.
For a product people actually want. I mean, I guess you could have a performative price ceiling that would do nothing.
Yeah, that's correct. You could say, no one can sell a car for less than $1 million. Well, nobody wants to, so it doesn't matter.
More than $1 million.
Or more than $1 million, right. See, I'm not used to talking about price floors. I got to reverse everything.
Right. So, think about a price floor. A price floor, the easiest example, although it will confuse some people, is a minimum wage.
Yes. Very good. Yes. Yes. Where the government comes along and says you may not sell your labor for less than $15 an hour. And that's kind of interesting because we think of the minimum wage as a restriction on employers. And that's the way politicians phrase it. They say, well, we're going to make those employers pay you $15 an hour. And that's one way to look at it. But an equally valid way to look at it is a constraint on the worker. It's my labor. Yes, I'd like $15 an hour, but if the alternative is nothing, I'll take 10 until the government comes along and says, no, you can't sell your labor for 10. You must sell it for 15.
Right. And when Nixon in 71 had wage and price controls, so you couldn't change a worker's wage, and prices had both a ceiling and a floor because they had to remain exactly where they are right now.
Right.
What ended up happening is that there were vast market shortages because producers of goods, and I would suspect producers of services, but let's just stick with goods. Producers of goods couldn't get those goods to market at the price that was already predetermined and still make a profit. Right. Matter of fact, many of them would have ended up losing money bringing goods to market. So you had reports at the time of farmers drowning all of their chickens because what else are you going to do with them? If you keep them alive, you have to keep feeding them. That's just an ongoing cost to you. But you can't sell them because if you did, you'd lose money on every sale.
Yeah, there's that in the stories of government destroying milk, pouring milk out into the streets. Why? Yep. Because there was a price floor, and that creates a surplus of this stuff. And you got to get rid of it now.
And the cost of milk differs widely from state to state because there are price floors on milk at the state level in a lot of places.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd heard one strange one about the price control was based on how far you were from some arbitrary geographic point in the state. I forget which state that is.
It's hard to make sense of these things when you start digging into them, right? Because when you start digging into them, all you see is economic disaster. And in the case of Nixon, inflation was running at about 6% in 71, which is, it's high, but it's not absurd. And this was an effort to kind of tamp that down, get it under control. Because if prices can't go up or down and wages can't go up or down, the politician thinks, I've just solved inflation.
Yeah, and this was coming from the oil crisis of the early 70s, where the oil-producing nations got together and they restricted their output, so the price of oil goes up, and of course it's pushing prices up. But again, it comes back to the scratching the numbers off the thermometer. Coming in and saying you can't charge more than X isn't addressing the problem. The problem is there wasn't enough oil going around, and the price was very high. It caused everything else to be high. You're just hiding the problem.
No, and,
which I guess if you're a politician is a win.
And in fairness, OPEC is a cartel. It's their job to keep supply limited, which keeps prices high. That's what cartels do, and you have to put enough pressure on a cartel for one of them to peel off and say, all right, I'm going to break this deal. It makes more sense for us to just sell you this oil at this price. To hell with it.
James and I are delighted to be working with Civil. For years, we have been pushing people to think about how we can make the world a better place. Civil's mission of upgrading society fits exactly with what James and I have been talking about for years. Civil helps us by allowing us to do what we do best, which is researching topics that are important and communicating these to our listeners in ways that we hope that they find enjoyable. To see Civil's extensive list of content, including our podcast, Words and Numbers, and our new lecture series, Words and Numbers Live, visit civil.com. That's CIVL.com.
When you think about it, what's happening now with this price floor business, we haven't even gotten into the well, you hate to even call it a reason because it's just so stupid. We're going to combat China with industrial policy. And the minute you hear industrial policy, you should get very concerned. I'm not saying that there's never a reason for it. I'm just saying when politicians start throwing that term around, you're probably about to get blindsided with something.
Yeah, well, the fundamental question is, do you want decisions at the industrial level being made by consumers and producers as they wrangle over what they want and what's possible, what they're willing to pay, or do you want it made by politicians who have no skin in that game?
Yeah, and when the Trump tariffs went into effect, Americans, yes, paid them, but what's the secondary effect? The secondary effect is that we buy fewer things from countries that have this massive tariff. China, for example. And when we buy fewer things from China, that hurts Chinese people too.
Which means they can't buy as much from us.
And then the Chinese government gets involved and said, well, you know what we should do? We should have tariffs. Because if the American politicians are so stupid to do it, we should be too. And then you've got a real problem because everybody keeps upping the tariffs until nobody buys a damn thing.
Right.
And here's where the problem lies, Ant. China has some stuff that we have to buy. It tends to be rare earth metals, right, that we do not have here. And so the same thing when you have these tariffs and the United States doesn't grow coffee. So why have tariffs on coffee? Well, there's literally no reason. But the net effect is that when you go to buy coffee, it's going to be horrifically expensive compared to before. Same thing with rare earth metals. If we don't produce them, why on earth are we tariffing them?
Right.
And I think, look, I would rather make the case that you shouldn't tariff anything. But you should absolutely never tariff something that you can't produce yourself.
Yeah, it's not like you can point to American jobs that you're saving from competition.
What's the benefit here? You're literally only creating harm. It's usually concentrated benefits and dispersed costs. But here, it's just costs.
Right.
There's not even the concentrated benefit to point to. So now we've got a trade problem of our own making. And in order to fix this problem, we're going to institute implement price floors across multiple industries and increase the government stake in ownership of multiple American companies. What do you think might happen as this plays out? Because I think this plays out very clearly.
Well, what you get is a slowing of the economy. So we've managed to avoid recession up until this point. You can kiss that goodbye right off. Secondly, we can look for examples. And if you look at the economic data, that period from the 1970 through to 1980 stands out. I can show you an economic graph of some arbitrary thing, and you'll immediately point to that and say, hey, what was going on there? They're all that way. Inflation went from,
that's right.
You said inflation, you're correct, about 6% at 1970.
6%.
It went up to 11% by 1974 and 14% by 1980. That's inflation. Then you had real interest rates doing the same thing. I can recall a time when mortgage rates were like double digits easily.
Yeah. They were above 15%.
Yeah.
And you literally you could get 15, 16, 17% on a certificate of deposit at your local bank. Something that now pays roughly 4%. And you could get 17, even 18% and still not keep up with inflation by the time you got to 79, 80, 81.
Yeah, and if there's anything, inflation is already running a bit hot. If we manage to slow down the economy, not to mention put upward pressure on prices because of the whole tariff business, we're never going to get back to, well, I don't think we're going to get back to where we were prior to COVID anyway, but we're just going to make a bad problem worse.
That's right. When Nixon implemented wage and price controls, Milton Friedman said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Oh my God."
That's about right. Yeah.
That inflation, like you have never known, will follow this.
Mm-hmm.
And Milton Friedman wasn't wrong very often, and he certainly wasn't wrong with this.
Yeah, you got this,
all
and
right.
That continued despite all the government efforts. I can remember under Ford, it was he had the win buttons, whip inflation now, and it was a major platform at Jimmy Carter's campaign.
Well, Jimmy Carter's malaise speech,
right?
One of the all-time idiotic presidential speeches.
And we made no headway on inflation until Paul Volcker came along, the chairman of the Fed, and said, that's it, and took to quote Greenspan, took the punch bowl away. He dramatically reduced the money supply and
it was painful.
Pulled back on inflation.
And it was
It was painful. It was painful for about a decade.
Yeah, for everybody.
Yeah.
You think, for young people who think they can't buy houses now, oh boy, do I have a period for you to go look at.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a train wreck.
Well, I'm looking here at, I've got not just the interest rate, but the inflation adjusted interest rate for 10-year Treasury bills. So the safest investment there is out there. In today's Treasury bills, inflation adjusted, are probably running, I know nominal they're like 4.4%. Take away, let's say, 3% inflation. So Treasuries are running about 1.5%.
Yep.
Real. So real interest rate.
That's what you
1.5. It was 7 in 1982. 7% on the safest investment, right? I mean, you can't get 7% on, anything.
And let's not forget that yes, Volcker did those things, and then Reagan came in and radically slashed the tax code.
Yes, and slashing the tax code made a big deal. It has nothing to, it has less to do with how much money the government's bringing in. What he did was alter people's incentives, because until that point, if I'm remembering correctly, there were like maybe a dozen tax brackets running all the way up to like 70% or something.
I think it might have been even 78. That one stands out. And he cut that top, he cut it down to, I think, 3, and the top rate was 27%.
Yeah, the top rate was 27%. So a massive reduction. And what's going on there, again, it's less about how much money the government collects. What was happening is you had a bunch of people, particularly all the way down to the middle class, realizing that it's not worth it to work harder because the government's just going to take a bigger chunk of your paycheck than they're currently taking.
Yep, and come to find out, and this is, the famous Laffer curve that was written on the back of a napkin in a DC bar. If you go to look up the article in which Art Laffer invents the Laffer curve, it doesn't exist. It was literally on the back of a napkin. And he said, if you cut rates enough, economic activity will pick up so much that the government will actually collect more.
Right.
And intuitively, people understand this, and I use the thought experiment all the time. Well, let's raise the income tax to 100%. How much will the government collect? And it's zero. The government will collect zero because nobody will go to work anymore. If we cut it to zero, what would the government collect? Zero. But if we raised it from 0 to 10%, the government would make a fortune.
Right, yeah.
They'd make more if we raised it to 20, and they'd make more if we raised it to 30. And when we raise it to 40, now that it actually starts to come down. Because people say crazy things like, well, I'm comfortable enough. I don't need to waste all my time working my ass off for no good reason.
Right, exactly.
I don't need to invest my money and put all kinds of other people to work when I could just retire.
Well, tell me this. Is it the case that there's a political benefit to higher tax rates? Because the higher the rate is, the more I as a politician have to offer constituents if they elect me. Elect me and I'll cut the rate down from 50% to 45. But I can't say that if the rate's 15 because I can't cut it from 15 to 10.
Yeah, but if it's 50, politicians love it because then they can tell entire industries or entire classes of people, I'll cut it for you.
Right. Yes.
Not those bastards over there. Right. You. And the tax code becomes a living, breathing tool that politicians can use. And I take the very simple approach that the tax code should exist only to raise a revenue.
Right.
It shouldn't be used to modify behavior. It shouldn't be used to reward friends and punish enemies. It should simply be a method to raise a revenue, which means we should have a flat tax with a standard exemption. It should be as easy as is humanly possible. You should be able to file your taxes on the back of a postcard in the space of about 2 minutes.
Yep.
And that's possible, and everybody knows that's possible. And yet the tax code is so voluminous that there is not a single human being in the United States of America who has read it, let alone understands it.
Well, I'll go you one further. I would surmise it is impossible to read it.
It is absolutely impossible.
By the time you reach the end, so much of it would have changed. You have to go back and reread those sections, and while you're rereading that, other things are changing. Do you know how many volumes it is?
And look, we figured this out once, and that was reading 24 hours a day for an entire year.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I forget
it's not
the
like
number.
you'd show up to work and read for 8 hours a day for a year. No. 365 days, 24 hours, can't be done.
I'm asking ChatGPT. I haven't looked at this in a while. How many pages? Okay. 106,000 pages in the Federal Register. The Federal Register is the official set of volumes that is the tax code. 106,000 pages.
I bet that is incorrect, and I bet the answer is much higher.
Oh, yeah, because I'm sure this is leaving out all the appendices and supporting documentation. Yeah.
I bet that's right. So when we think about our present government, and we've got Nixon in the rear view and Reagan in the rear view, the present government is much more like Nixon than Reagan. Its
policies are very Nixonian. Yeah.
Very, and that really means we're dealing with a leftist government in a lot of respects. Now, people aren't going to want to hear that. But ask yourself, would Ronald Reagan be even welcome in today's Republican Party? And I don't think he would.
He'd be a radical, yeah. I'll throw out another president, FDR. The current president's policies are very similar to policies that he had. For example,
people are going to hate what you just said.
Under FDR's administration, the government imposed a price ceiling on wages to help control inflation. So it said, you cannot pay your workers more than a certain amount. And what do you do if you're an employer and you need to hire people? And normally the way you hire people is you offer them more money to entice them away from the jobs that they're currently at. You can't do that. And so employers came up with the idea that, well, okay, according to the law, I can't offer you more money, but how about if I offer you the same amount of money you're earning now, plus I'll give you health insurance? And the health insurance went around the law.
Just stop right there for a second. That's how health insurance became linked to jobs.
Yes, it's how health insurance became linked to jobs. And eventually, when the price controls are taken away on wages, you can now pay your workers more. But by that time, the employers had lobbied the government to make this health insurance, the health benefits, tax-free. And now both the employer and the employee wanted to keep the health benefits coming through the employer because there was no taxes on that. We all have that today. We understand that. But that brings us from FDR all the way to Obama, where with the Affordable Care Act, what's the problem he's trying to solve? He's trying to solve the problem of pre-existing condition, that you're sick, and because you're sick, you can't work, you lose your job, you lose your insurance because your insurance comes through your employer. You go to get new insurance and the new insurance company says, no, we're not covering you. You're already sick. Pre-existing condition problem. It exists because of FDR back in the 19-whatevers imposing wage controls.
That's right. And the Affordable Care Act, I might add, was designed to make care affordable.
Yeah.
How's that worked out for everybody? If only two guys could have predicted back when this was first introduced that this was going to yield a spike in healthcare costs like we had never seen before. If only, wait a second, we did that.
Not only did we say it, we went back, I want to say 5 years later, and we published an op-ed saying, okay, here's what we were promised with the Affordable Care Act. And we took it verbatim from President Obama's speeches. Right. This. Here's what we're promised. Here's the reality. Nothing that we were promised came out. We were promised everyone would be insured. No. Now, to his credit, there are fewer uninsured people after the Affordable Care Act than before, but we're still talking, I think it was 10 or 20 million still uninsured, despite Affordable Care Act.
I mean, the short lesson here, given everything we've just said, if you want to tie it all up in a neat bow, is that when government gets involved in markets, market distortions occur. When market distortions occur, bad things happen for regular people.
Yeah, and the market distortions are occurring because the thing the government is trying to control is an effect. It's not a cause.
That's right.
If you want to fix the problem, find out what the cause is and address that.
Yep, and politicians don't like doing that because it's hard, it's complicated.
And usually they're the cause.
And it doesn't fit neatly into partisan paradigms.
Right.
It's a little from here, a little from there, and oh God, we were kind of responsible for this ourselves. Well, let's just pass another law saying, but this time we mean it.
Right, yeah.
Let's do the same damn thing, only harder. Well, that's what we're doing
What is the joke?
Literally right now.
What is the joke about the mafia that they'll break your legs and then sell you crutches? That is exactly what the government does. We're having this conversation at all because of what prices are doing, and prices are doing that because of the very same politicians who imposed these trade controls.
That's right. And the massive inflation that came when Nixon monkeyed about in things he should never have been bothering with is about to come back. What we're looking at doing right now will yield far worse inflation than we have right this second. And it's
James,
not great right this second.
And what happens when 5-10 years from now we have a progressive president who points back to this and says, President Trump controlled prices. I'm going to control them as well for social reasons.
That's right. President AOC will say exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Because why the hell wouldn't she? We make the case, whether people realize it or not, because we don't say it out loud all the time, but we make the case week after week for limited government. And we do it in the face of unlimited government. Is there something that the United States government can't do right now? Because it was designed not to be able to do a lot of things.
Yeah, it was deliberately designed not to do things.
Not to do things. And boy, that ship has sailed. And we pay for that every day. And it's getting worse now, not better. So here we are. And, we'll be back in the future to tell you about what we said today, just like we always do. But it sure would be nice if somebody'd listen. You got any other bright ideas for the weekend?
I have nothing.
Well, in that case, I know it's hard. I always know it's hard. But just try in these difficult times to be a little nicer. I'm not even saying this week to be nice to each other. This has been a particularly nasty week. But let's be a little nicer to each other. It'll be worth it in the end, I promise you. See you next time, man.
See you next time, James. At Words and Numbers, we spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the economy and the government, but fundamentally, all of this boils down to one thing. The greatest threat facing modern society is a lack of respect. That people who disagree somehow find it difficult, if not impossible, to discuss their differences in civil manner. We at Civil are interested in upgrading civilization by encouraging people to engage with new ideas and ultimately engage civilly with each other. If you share this idea, please join us by subscribing at civil.com. That's CIVL.com.